I'd like to turn it over to the panel from San Diego County to talk about their approach to split sentence offenders, including Captain Billy Duke from the San Diego Sheriff's Department, Kim Vegas, the Deputy Public Defender, John Kiefer, the Deputy Probation Officer, and Lisa Rodriquez, Deputy District Attorney. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We are here to talk to you a little bit about our mandatory supervision court. You know, when AB 109 went into effect, we had a lot of pressing needs. We were worried about our PRCS offenders. We were worried about how do we get people into custody? How do we hold them? What do we do with violations? What do we do with revocations? And so we developed a lot of processes on the front end for dealing with some of the most immediate needs. We weren't really thinking that much about mandatory supervision up front. And we actually were kind of just relying on probation. Well, they're going to treat them like high-risk probationers. And so during that first year, we didn't really have a whole lot going on. What we had was about 1,900 people got local prison sentences in our first year. 93% of those were drug and property crimes. And only 23% of those cases were split sentences. And what we found within that first year, we had 117 offenders that were released from custody and picked up new offenses. And that's a little concerning. We noticed that, we were treating them as high-risk probationers, but we weren't doing a whole lot more. And that made it difficult to sell to the DAs, defense bar, the judges doing a split sentence. That's why we had a lower rate of split sentences. Well, if we're going to treat them as probationers and they didn't do well at probation, should we do something else for mandatory supervision? We also found that there was kind of an inconsistent approach throughout the county. Sometimes somebody was on mandatory supervision, they picked up a new offense, and we knew about it. Sometimes we didn't. And sometimes we took that into consideration resolving a new case. Sometimes they were getting picked up on a warrant, getting released again. We just didn't find that we were really treating people kind of holistically, and that concerned us. And we realized that we were sending the wrong message to the offenders. We were telling them that, hey, when you get mandatory supervision, it's kind of free time, You're free from custody, and we hope that you do well. Probation's going to keep an eye on you, but you're not going to really have to report back, and we'll see how it goes. And we didn't like that we were sending out that message. No knock on our probation department, they were doing a great job, but we felt like we needed to do more, that the traditional criminal justice system wasn't going to work for mandatory supervision, and if we wanted to reduce recidivism, then we were going to have to do something different. So we in San Diego are very collaborative, and we already knew that there's a lot of interdependencies in our criminal justice system. We knew that you have to work with probation, with the sheriff's department, with the district attorney's office, with the probation department, with the public defender's office, and that everything we did kind of had an effect on the community at large, and they affected the offenders. And so you can't really just operate in silos and be successful. So what we did is we looked to what had worked in the past. We had SB 618 in San Diego County, and that was our prisoner reentry program. We started that in 2007, and that was a collaborative with all the usual people, the probation department, the district attorney's office, the public defenders, the Superior Court, and CDCR. And our program started from the time they pled guilty. We did a case plan with probation with them while they were in custody. Then once we got them to CDCR, we tried to do programming in CDCR. They came out and they were case managed. And we actually have people that are on the mandatory supervision court team that were on that same team. And some of them are out in the audience and some of them are up here. And so we had this already collaborative and knew that there were certain things that worked for re-entering people into the community. Out of our SB 618 program grew our local reentry program. And our amazing Sheriff Gore said, we've got people in custody and we're not necessarily giving them the programs that they should be getting. We let people take advantage of a lot of programs, but are they the right programs? And so we modeled our local reentry program for probationers on what we were doing for SB 618. And we've had drug courts in San Diego for quite some time, and we love that collaborative model. And about 2 years ago, we started a reentry court for our parolees that were coming back and picking up new offenses. And we modeled that a lot on our drug courts and used a lot of the things from SB 618 to try to really address criminogenic needs. And our reentry court has been very successful, really excited. Again, all the same collaborative partners are involved in that, including law enforcement. And we take the people that have just done the worst on parole, that have 5 or 6, 7, 8 prison priors, and we get them into a collaborative model where we know every single thing about them, and we make sure that they're getting treatment and programming and education and jobs, and we are very, very involved. And so we took all of those things and we looked at what we knew was working. We knew that transitioning back in the community was absolutely critical. We have to do something while they're in custody to make them more successful when they get out. We knew that treatment and probation need to talk to each other, that we need to have that access between them so that they know if something's going wrong in treatment, probation knows about it and they can address it. We knew that we needed consistent, well-defined, immediate incentives and sanctions because that's what the evidence showed us, that's what we've seen work in our other programs. One of the most important things about reentry court that we didn't have in SB 618 or local reentry was the court involvement on the back end. Having the judge, having that consistent person there, the judge that they can come back and respond to, much like the San Joaquin program, where they want to do well for that judge. And they know what the response is going to be if they don't do well, that really is a cornerstone to any program. And we also knew that changing behavior takes time, patience, and persistence. And we like to say not just of the offenders, but of all the justice partners up here as well. If we want them to change their behavior, we have to change our behavior and really have a paradigm shift. So we decided to take all those elements and create our mandatory supervision court. And we said mandatory supervision court wasn't going to be business as usual, and our judge actually called it a blueprint for success. We wanted to hold all of us, all of the partners accountable, but we wanted to hold the offenders accountable as well. We wanted to ensure that there was treatment and that there was supervision. We wanted to be based on evidence-based practices so that the right people were getting the right treatment at the right time and the right dosage. And we wanted to make sure that we had that courtroom process right in the middle of it. So what we came up with was our collaborative plan. It's all centered on the assessment of the offender. At the time of the sentencing, probation meets with the offender, anybody that's going to get a split, and they are starting the case plan right there at the time of the probation report. And then everything else flows from that assessment. We do a multidisciplinary team approach, so just like in a collaborative court, we've got all the justice partners involved in custody as well as once they get out into the community. For offenders who can actually get into the right level of housing or classification, they get mandatory programming, treatment, education, and a cognitive behavioral therapy while they're in custody. While the sheriff has them in their house, they're working. When they get out, before they actually are released back to the community, they come back to court. They meet with our judge, and Kim's going to talk to you about what that court process is like, but they have a pre-release hearing, and they actually have to come back to court to get review hearings to follow up on what they're doing or if they're not doing it. We have that nice transition from their case managers in custody to our probation officers once they get into the community. And then we have a 3-phase process, and John Kiefer is going to talk to you about that. So I'm going to turn it over to our sheriff's representative, Billy Duke, and he's going to talk to you about what it is we're offering while they're in custody.